For those of you enjoying the new Queen Charlotte story on Netflix, let's have a look at 5 things Bridgerton gets wrong or right about the real Queen Charlotte. Number 1. Charlotte arrives in England speaking English and converses with George. False. In the first episode, we see Charlotte and George meeting in the gardens where they speak for the first time, and they learn each other's true identities before George reassures Charlotte before taking her off to get married. In reality, Charlotte didn't speak a word of English or understand any English at all. Charlotte was from a small German duchy called Mecklenburg-Strelitz. Sorry if I haven't pronounced that right, I don't speak German. And that's in northern Germany. She was said to have only had a very mediocre education, focusing mainly on household management and religion. So she didn't speak any English on her wedding day, which was actually only 6 hours after landing in England, which sounds really intense. To be fair to Charlotte, it is said that she learnt the language really quickly and spoke with a German accent for the rest of her life. I think it would have been really helpful if they'd shown Charlotte with a faint German accent to help remind us that she's really far away from home and feels rather lonely later on in the show. So maybe that's something that would have helped us remember that a little bit better. Number 2. The King's mother, Princess Augusta, uses ladies-in-waiting to spy on Charlotte. True. In episode 2, we see Lady Danbury being asked by Princess Augusta to become a lady-in-waiting and to effectively spy on Charlotte for her. Now, Lady Danbury uses this as a way to bargain for more status for her husband. Fair enough to her. Now, as King George was only 22 when he became king, his mother, Princess Augusta, and her councillors were still very much involved, and they did try to exert quite a lot of control over George. Now, as you can imagine, this made Charlotte's relationship with her mother-in-law pretty difficult, and Augusta would try and restrict Charlotte's movements, and she even insisted on choosing her ladies-in-waiting, which we can see in the show. Now, although Lady Danbury herself is obviously a fictional character, it is true that many of Charlotte's ladies-in-waiting would feed information on Charlotte to Augusta. So this did happen in real life. Number 3. King George's illness was evident before his marriage, and the marriage with him and Charlotte starts off unhappily. False. In the first couple of episodes, it's clear that George, his servants, and even the court are hiding the secret that George is ill, and George himself is very worried about Charlotte finding out. He even goes to great lengths to distance himself from her, even making her live separately for him whilst he goes to live in Kew. In reality, George and Charlotte's marriage was actually said to be very happy when it began, and George never took a mistress, which was a precedent for kings at this time. His illness only really began in 1765, which was a couple of years after his marriage to Charlotte, and that was just a short episode of poor mental health, nothing as serious as we see in the show. His more serious illnesses did not really begin until the 1780s. George suffered from confusion, hallucinations, and paranoia. There was one occasion he had to be placed in a straitjacket. On another, he spoke incoherently for hours on end without pause, causing him to foam at the mouth. Doctors today aren't really sure whether it was a manic episode of a bipolar disorder or a genetic blood disorder called porphyria. Queen Charlotte was horrified when she learnt his diagnosis and refused to allow anybody to pronounce him mad, even falling out with her family about this. She insisted on living with him at Kew throughout his illness until he became so violent and difficult that she had to live separately from him, and this caused her to slip into a great depression. At the time of her death, at the age of 74, George sadly did not even remember who she was and didn't appear to be affected by it. The succession crisis. True. In the show, we see Queen Charlotte berating her children for not providing grandchildren to secure a future heir. Although Charlotte did indeed have 15 children, this was actually a big problem in real life. Her granddaughter, Princess Charlotte, was the wife of her eldest son, and she sadly died in childbirth, which we do see in the show. But this now meant that there were no legitimate grandchildren to become heirs after her son. Time was running out. Some of Charlotte's daughters did not marry. and this would all pave the way for future Queen Victoria to take the throne as she succeeded her uncle William IV in 1837. Luckily, she did make up for the lack of heirs by producing 8 children and marrying them into European royal families, hence why so many modern royals are related today, including our late Queen Elizabeth II and her husband Prince Philip, and they were related because their common great-grandmother was Queen Victoria herself. Number 5. Charlotte gets her first Pomeranian. False. Now, in the show, Charlotte is clearly not a fan of the Pomeranian puppy Pom Pom, and she refers to him as a deformed bunny. But in real life, she adored them. She actually already had 2 Pomeranians before she came to England, and she brought them with her on her journey from Germany. They were called Phoebe and Mercury. Over the years, she bred from them, and she would give them to friends and members of the court as gifts. Do let us know what you think in the comments, and please do visit us on Etsy. Thank you. Bye.